Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about estimates and invoices and creating invoices from estimates. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the preferences that many people don't really pay attention to and some of the little details on the process. So if you're thinking to yourself, I know all this, I bet you don't. You'll probably know half of it. You could even know 3/4 of it, but you're here for that 20 or 25% that you may not be aware of. So let's get started. I'm going to open up the invoice estimate list, and let's go ahead and open an estimate. And let's talk about this. Now, this topic has come up recently in tech support, I've noticed, and so that means you'll hear about it, I think, more likely than not. You know what, that's not a good estimate. I'm going to make my own. Let's right-click, do new estimate. And we will enter a date, a current date, so I can make our demo database a little better. Let's pick a customer, find somebody we haven't used in a while. Tim Smith, I don't remember using him, so we'll pick him. All right, so here we have an estimate. Give it a little memo, and let's put some items on here. Now, the fastest way to put items on here, especially if you want a certain type of item, is to use the lookup feature. And this gives you the opportunity to filter by vendor, by item type, by warehouse. I have inventory parts selected because it remembered what I was doing last. And I have only include items with a positive quantity, which means on hand. That's kind of handy too. I might want to only see what I have in stock. And let's go ahead and just add every one of them. So I had the first row highlighted, and I held the shift key down, and I touched the last row, and it highlighted all of them, and I'll move them over. And now here, as you probably know, you can change the quantity, and you can rearrange them if you want to. So if you feel like this needs to be at the top, you can do that. And if something is on here that you wish you hadn't put on there, you can, of course, highlight it and get it off there, clicking this little arrow there. Another thing you could do is, whoops, I had all of them highlighted, didn't I? So let's put them all back. Let's put them back over there. All right. So now one thing I could do is grab one individual item and get it off there if I wanted to, and I could grab another item and put it over here if I wanted to. And you'll notice that it set the quantity at 2. That's because we have that behavior programmed in it, but not everybody would agree with that behavior. So we have a feature here that says list multiple selections separately. So that way, if I add that again, and I can double click or use the arrow, either one, notice it just keeps adding the item over and over again. And people might like that. Now, in a demo, someone might say, why would anyone do that? And you don't always have to know the answer. If you do know the answer, that's great. But you can always fall back and say, I don't know. I don't know why anybody would do that, but I know one thing. It's there for a reason. Somebody wanted it, and somebody thought it was a big deal. And what's funny about a big deal is one person's big deal means nothing to most everybody else. But we really try to accommodate a lot of those big deals. It's that attention to detail that we work on around here. So the item lookup's quite handy. Now, I could use a barcode scanner right now and put it in barcode scanning mode, and I happen to have that box checked. If you have it in barcode scanning mode, then it will automatically add the item once you scan it, and it takes the entry literally. So what I mean by that is it searches for exact and not like. So right now, if I type in 2-1 and do a lookup, it finds everything like 2-1, which is the same thing as contains. So you're familiar with those terms because user fields, or the user filters have that. Most everything searches that way. So like and contains means the same thing, but if it's in barcode scanning mode, it takes it literally. So it could not find it because there is no item number 21, and it would have to be exact. So barcode scanning mode does two things. It changes your search for to exact, and it hits the enter key for you after the scan and assuming it finds something. That's what that does. Questions on barcode scanning mode? Now, in a demo, it would be great if we create a sheet with barcodes on it. And then we could say to somebody, I know you can't see me right now, but I have a barcode scanner. And you might even open up a picture of it, and say, I have a barcode scanner. Here it is. This is my scanner. And I'm about to scan 10 things from a piece of paper that I have. Now, this could be your cheat sheet, kind of like the grocery store has when you come up there with produce and they can't find the label and they open up their cheat sheet. But it could also be a pile of stuff on the floor, right? And I'm going to start scanning. And what will be neat is when you start scanning, it'll start adding things really fast. And then when you're ready, you click OK, and it'll drop those things on the estimate. Now, you'll notice that the cost each is being shown, and it's disabled. That's because that's the price you pay for it. And we're not going to let you edit that, of course. And you'll notice that the price each and the amount is editable because, of course, that's what you're selling it for, and we'll let you change that. And you can change the quantity, obviously. Now, one thing people don't always realize is you can type in the amount, $200, and it'll actually change the price each to 50. So it took 200 and divided by 4. But you could also type in 200, and it'll multiply price each by 4. That's attention to detail. Hard to sell the detail, but it really matters. Now, you'll notice there's no markup method at all. And the reason why is Ted Smith doesn't have a default markup method. So if we were to go to his record, and I'm going to do that just to make sure it's working properly. It's a good idea to do that because maybe it's broken. Maybe we've created a bug recently. So if I go to additional info, you'll notice he does not have a markup method. If he had, it would have used the markup method for these items. So let's go take a look at the item. Since it didn't have a markup method for Tim Smith, it would look for the markup method in the item. So it first looks to see if the customer has one. If it doesn't, it looks to see if the price has one. The part has one. If the part doesn't, then it just uses the retail price. This is important, especially those of you in tech support. You have to understand the flow, and you'll get calls on this. People will be surprised about the price. Where did that price come from? So in many cases, it's a good idea not to give the customer a default markup. Don't give the item a default markup. Use the retail price instead. Now, one thing you can do, obviously, is if you don't want to try to do the math in your head, you could always pick a markup method, and it will suggest it right here, but it won't use it. To use it, you could just click that. And if you want to clear the markup method, you can. Now you can hit save and close, and it will use 113 for now on. So it first looks to see if the customer has a markup method, then it looks at the item, and then if that's not available, it uses the retail price. Otherwise, it will put the markup method here and multiply the cost, or whatever it's supposed to multiply, it depends on the markup method, but it will utilize the markup method to come up with the price, which could be different than the price of the item. All right, so that's important to understand. Somebody could say to you, the retail price of my item is $100 and your program makes it $50. And so the first thing you want to do is look at the customer setup and then look at the item setup, because it could be grabbing the markup and doing the math. All right, so the markup method, just keep this in mind, the markup method does not directly determine the retail price on this form. It only determines the suggested retail price, and you still have to click a button to get it into that field. Now, some companies, it's rare, but some companies operate from a list price down method of pricing. So the item has a list price that nobody pays. Like you go up to Kohl's, right? And they say, you could have paid $1 billion for this t-shirt. That's the list price. You'll see list price on things. No one pays list price. They mark down from list price. Might mark down 10%, 50%, whatever. It might be on sale and it's half off list price. So some people use the reduce from list price method, and that's why we call it a markup markdown method, because you can do either one. And you'll find those under company, inventory, markup, price level list, not that one, this one, price level list. And here's where you create yours, and you have these different methods. You can charge a fixed dollar amount, you can multiply, you can divide, you can do all kinds of things. There's one in here that's interesting, and that is there's no markup and there's zero retail price. You might think, what's the difference? Well, no markup means I'm going to sell it at cost. I don't want to mark it up at all. I'm selling it at cost. But zero retail price means I'm selling it for nothing, zero. And that's what I mean to do. Now, you might be tempted to think, well, why not just have a zero retail price? Why would you have a markup method which doesn't mark it up? Why would you have a markup method that creates a zero price? Because that way everyone knows that's what you meant. You meant to have a zero retail price. That was your intention. So that is where you do most of your markup methods. There's another method though here, and that is the inventory markup table. And what this table does is it varies the markup depending on the price you pay. It was very common before flat rate pricing came along, because flat rate pricing doesn't need to mark up parts this way. Flat rate pricing would use something different, which I can't get into here. It's off topic. But the advantage of the markup table is that it considers the price you pay in order to determine the retail price. And this would be very common at a hardware store, where they might pay 2 cents for a screw, but they charge you 12 cents. A 2-cent screw becomes 12 cents because they mark it up 6 times. But a $20 drill bit, they pay $20. That's an expensive drill bit. They pay $20 for something, they might charge you about 70. And the reason why they have to charge you 12 cents for a 2-cent screw is because it takes about as much effort to handle the screw as it does the drill bit. But they can only charge so much for a screw. But if you think about it, it's the same thing. I got to order the screw, I got to receive the screw, hook it into the computer, walk over there, put it into the bin. You pick it up, you take it to the cash register, it gets sold, it's put in a bag, How's that any different than a drill bit? And the drill bit got us, $30, $40 potentially of gross profit dollars, and the darn screw got us a dime. So it's important that we mark up small items much more than we do the larger items. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, let's go back to the estimate then. Now, one thing that I can do on this estimate is add markups. So I could just go find one and put them in here if I want to. And that'll start changing the price. Another option I have is to go to the header. Whenever you hear that term, we typically mean the area at the top of the form, whether it's a bill or anything else. The header. It's usually the top of the form, usually to the left. I can come to the header and I can select a markup method. And the software will say, hey, do you want to change all the items too? And I might say yes. Now, where that could be handy is when I go in and manually change the prices of all the items. I manually change them to what I want to sell them for. And I don't want those to be affected in the future by changes in the price I paid. So I would come in here and do a no markup on this item and say yes. No markup on the item before I start changing my prices. See, the markup method may not be doing anything, but I can still change my prices. And if I change my prices, they will stay the same, even if the price each changes in the future. Any questions on that part?
Yeah, can you hide that column, the markup markdown method, on an estimate? Is there a preference for that?
If you go to Form Preferences under the menu, you'll notice that you can hide or add a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
And Markup Method is one of them. All right, so I hope that's clear. That's actually real important, especially, again, for tech support, a trainer, anyone, an advanced user. In sales, of course, it's nice to know this because it just makes you a better salesperson. But it's critical for anything above that knowledge level. When you get to tech support, training, this is important. These are important points. Okay, so the no markup method assures that whatever price I put in stays there. But as you probably noticed, you don't want to change your price each and then change your markup method because that ruins your work. You got to remember to do it at the beginning. All right, so now we have an estimate and we try to make the sale. So we might use our stage feature. Our estimate status is in progress. A lot of people see that as meaning the job is in progress. No, the estimate is in progress, not the job. And we might want to change the order. This is a random order. We might want to ask programming, hey, would you change the order? But no one's ever asked, so we haven't done it. But we're in progress currently. And we're on the phone trying to make the sale, trying to get somebody to buy this. And what do we do then? Well, it's not my job to tell you how to run your company, but I will tell you what we had intended. We had intended for you to come in and go to the contact log and make notes that you're trying to make the sale. So you might say that I called Tim to try and close the sale. He will call us back. Something like that. And then you probably want a topic that you can search out to see how busy your salespeople are. So you want sales call out, subject, and the subject is estimate 78802. That's good note taking. Now the boss knows you're busy. And let's put in a better date here. 03, 05, 2020. Mine's defaulting to an old date because I'm in a demo database and it just does that. And I saw my typo here, so I'll fix that typo. All right, now I'll hit save and close. And I put in those notes. And then eventually we make the sale to Tim. So we call Tim up and we'll go back to the contact log and we say, hey, Tim, what about the sale? And he says, I'll take it. So we're going to do sales call out. That's the estimate. Type in my note and hit save and close. And then I will go to the estimate status, and that might be, stage 2, whatever you decide. And I'll go to awarded. And I need to make sure that on the estimate, I've picked myself. So I get credit for the sale. So whoever I am, I'll be Bob today. I want to make sure I'm picked right there because there are reports saying that Bob had 10 estimates and sold 5 of them. He's got a 50% closure rate. And it can even judge my closure rate by department that we're in right there. So I want to be sure I select that. And then I'm ready to save it. Now, it says that this guy has a service agreement and you forgot to give him a discount. Do you want to save anyway? Yes. And that's that. Now, we do have a change order feature. If I were to go in here and modify this estimate after it's been awarded, if I modify it, then it's going to ask if I want to enter a change order. And I won't get into that, except I'll just mention it. But I do want to talk about the potential flow here. From the estimate, we might need an approval. So I made the sale, but the boss has to approve it. That's how it is here. The boss has to approve it. But I could even have my own approval permission. So we have turned on the feature to approve the estimate, but I could also be authorized to approve estimates. And I can even have a dollar limit, a dollar minimum, dollar maximum, that kind of thing. So I'm going to approve my own work because I trust me. Now go back to the menu. Now that that's done, I can print it, email it. But I might want to print a pick ticket. Now what a pick ticket does, and you can see there's options, it gives me a piece of paper for picking inventory from the warehouse. That's why they call it a pick ticket, obviously. So here we have a list of all the items that we need, and it shows me how many we supposedly have in this location, the main warehouse. If we had a bin number, it'd be listed. Supposedly we have 10. 7 are on hand. Back ordered are 1. I need 4, and I have a place to write how many I pulled. And eventually, if we have to return any, then we could return them here. So that's the pick ticket, and I'm talking now about the flow. And the flow is up to you, but this is just an idea. So I might print the pick ticket or ask the warehouse person to print the pick ticket. And by the way, when the pick ticket gets printed, we could go to stage 3. And when the items are picked and staged, we could go to stage 4. So we could have something in here called print pick ticket. We could have another one in here called items pulled and staged. Could have another one called items loaded up on trailer, or whatever you decide. The stage feature allows you to stay organized. Another thing that you could be doing is you could be creating something like your work orders. And remember, a work order is a permission slip to do the work. We might be ready to start creating our work orders and start getting people assigned to the job or scheduled for the job, or at least create the work orders so that they're there and someone else can finish them. But it might be my job here to create the work orders and just get the process started. Again, I might create the work orders, assign a company assets, type in some notes, but maybe I don't finish the process. Maybe that's stage 7 and that's somebody else's job. Or I might have to create purchase orders. And the software will create one big purchase order for a vendor of my choice. And you can, by the way, make copies of that purchase order. So you could create a single purchase order and make multiple copies of it. And then you could send the purchase orders out to multiple vendors asking for their best price. Some people often ask us if we have a price requisition or a request for bid feature in the software. They can't find it. They're disappointed. They'll say, I've looked all around. I'm disappointed that I can't find a request for price, request for bid feature in your software. Well, we do have that. It's just a pending PO. So you can create a purchase order, an order to purchase something, make copies of it and give it to multiple places and say, give me your best price. You could modify each. You could make a copy of it and modify each one and send it out. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it. You're just creating a purchase order, giving somebody an opportunity to fill it. A purchase order is like the reverse of an estimate or a proposal, right? So go back to menu, go back to create what? Copies, invoices, a lot of things here. Purchase order, a single one, or one for preferred vendor. And what that'll do is that'll look at your items and it'll look to see if the item has a preferred vendor. And if you have a favorite place you like to buy it from, then it will make a purchase order for that item or items for that vendor. And you'll notice when I open this form up, it said Granger. There is a preference. This form has a lot of preferences, over 1,000, I'm sure. There's a preference that says, what's your favorite vendor? And it'll pick it for you, just to save you one thing, just to save you one thing. Probably somebody asked for that. We've had it so long, I don't even know, but probably somebody called and said, I can't believe you don't have a favorite vendor thing. And then probably somebody also called and said, I can't believe you don't have a favorite vendor, a default favorite vendor. And it got added. So you have the ability to create a purchase order for multiple vendors for all these items. Now, keep in mind, I didn't mention this earlier, your lookup form down at the top of the list, lookup right there. Lookup has form preferences, and one of those preferences could be show me how many I have in stock. So you would have known how many are in stock, how many are reserved, and so forth. Reason why I came in here is I wanted to add an item. So there's an item right there, 2 of them, in fact. Bam, put it on there. Let's go to menu, hit save. And now it says, you got a change order. And I'll type in a note. Add. All right, so there we go. There's the change order. Now, this is sold, and we're ready to do whatever your company decides to do. Now, notice I have to have the change order approved too. So I'm going to approve it. And you'll see down at the bottom, it tells me who created it, who last revised it, and at the top, it tells me who approved it. And all of that was written to the audit trail, by the way. So we have a good record of everything that's been done. Now, at some point, you're going to be ready to invoice this. One thing I want to mention is this process could have taken months. And by the time you sold it, it could have been 4 months ago from the time you created the estimate. 4 months could have passed. And that means your cost each would have changed, most likely, which could potentially change your price each. That could happen. But we don't know if that's what you want it to do. So we have features that'll help with that. So let's create an invoice. It asks you if you want to create an invoice for the entire amount. Many people, that's all they ever do. But you do have an option to create what some people call progress billing, progress invoicing, percentage of completion. And you have the ability to create a 25%, 50% invoice. We also can handle retainage if you have retainage. I won't do that right now. I'm simply going to create an invoice for the entire amount. It warns me that I don't have sufficient quantities on hand to sell these things. Do I want to continue? Yes. Now, that's a preference to allow such a thing, by the way. We can have the software not allow people to sell things they don't have. I'm going to correct the date, 03/04, 2020. All right, so now we have our invoice. If we had a markup method on the invoice, the markup method won't change the price each by default. It will come over exactly like the estimate was created. The markup method, even if it's a markup method like 40% or whatever, it won't change the price each if other factors that affect it have changed. We did that on purpose because we think you probably don't want to change it because you sold it for $4,566.39. If that's what they're planning on paying, we probably don't want to change that, right? So we did not change it automatically. We didn't do that. But we do have the ability for you to make that decision. You can come down to this feature called refresh price each, not cost each, but price each. And it'll ask you, are you sure? You're about to change or you're about to replace the retail price, the price each of everything. Are you sure you want to do that? Now, in this case, it will not change anything. Well, wait a minute. I have no markup on this item. So be interesting to see. What will that do? No markup on the item? I'll let you decide what it's going to do. Think about that a minute. No markup on this item. There's the price each. There's the cost, what we're paying. Are you sure you want to change this? And I'll say yes. And boom, there, change those items. So you have the ability to change the price each manually on an invoice if you want to, but we don't do it for you. It's an extra step. And that is not a preference, by the way. There's no preference to automatically change it because most people don't want to. Now, oh, there's a service agreement warning again. And now it's offering to show me what we need to order. So it says, hey, this is the reorder point. And this is what you have. So even though we have the items in stock, it said we don't have sufficient quantities. What did it mean by that? It just meant that you don't have enough in stock to meet your needs because you told the software you want to reorder at 2 and now you're at 1. So now we're back at the estimate where it all started. On an estimate, you can create a copy. Are you sure? Yep. And the estimate also has the refresh price each feature. That's because we created an exact copy with the exception of the date. We created an exact copy and we don't know what you want to do with the pricing. So it's possible that you want to use current pricing. You might want to use a different markup, or you might have a different markup in here, and you might want current pricing. And it's going to go through the estimate, and basically it does the same thing as if you removed an item and put it back. Removed an item and put it back. It's going to use the latest information. So if that item is changed in any way, it's going to use the new information, not the old. So that's on the estimate and the invoice. Questions so far? Okay. All right, let's talk about one feature that's important. We will open up our invoice item list. If you ever need to change some of the properties of an item, like you realize you set it up incorrectly, very common, you have a batch update utility here that allows you to change the most common attributes of an item, like the markup method, the category it belongs to, the income account, cost account, etc. So somebody tells you, well, you picked the wrong account, or you want to have a different account in the future, or you want to add warranty information or whatever, the batch update utility can be very helpful. Also, if you have a lot of inventory items, then you could adjust the quantity and value for those items quickly by using this action. Adjust the item quantity. You could also right-click for other options. So there's other things you can do here as well. Under the item list, just like everywhere else, you have form preferences that allow you to decide what columns you want to see and your quick search. Don't forget you have a smart list. The smart list allows you to create a list of things like, for example, truck stock list or things that you want Stephen to count. So you might tell Stephen, your coworker, Stephen, I want you to count up inventory items this week. I have selected 23 for you. I want you to go count them. And if the count is wrong, then I want you to adjust the quantity on hand and just focus on the warehouse, not the trucks, the warehouse. Like I said, there's 23 things that I want you to count. Well, what are those 23 things? Go to the invoice item list and you'll see your name under user smart lists. It'll say Stephen counts. Now, when you count them, I want you to right-click and do remove. Right-click and do remove. So as you go through these, just remove them And that way I can see your progress. All of the major lists have these features, the Smart List feature, the form preferences, and so forth. Don't forget that you can also create your own filters so that you can see certain things like discounts and flat rate tasks and inventory items. Under Tools and Utilities, we have a feature that I'm looking for. Oh, there it is, down at the bottom. Update retail price. As I said earlier, the retail price does not get updated automatically. So if you use a markup method that says, I want to double the price I pay, the price that you pay will change all year long. And you may not want that price to change all year long. You might have price changes twice a year, 4 times a year. You might have printed price sheets or made promises to people, and you don't want your retail pricing changing. So we don't change your retail price automatically. The suggested retail price might be changing as you do your accounting work every day, but the retail price will not. You have to initiate that, and thankfully it's easy. You come in here and you say, hey, find me all the parts that have a markup method of the following. So you might have to do this many times. Find me the ones that have this markup. Or I'm sorry, I misspoke. Let me correct myself. I'm thinking of old behavior. What this does is it says, hey, if there is no markup method, I want you to put one in. And so you could say, if there's no markup method, use that one. And then your direct cost multiplication can be based on 4 options. You can multiply the direct cost by the markup method. You could multiply the average cost by the markup method. You could multiply using the estimated cost when the average cost is blank. What's that look like? I'll show you in a second. You can multiply using the estimated cost or use the average cost if the estimated cost is blank. And you also have the option of ignoring the retail price field if it already has a price. So you might be coming in here just to update items that do not have a retail price. You have pretty good options here. And then you have to check this box before the update box is available to you because it will change the database. When I do this, it's written to the audit trail that I made this change. So if you ever have to go look, it's in the audit trail. Also, don't forget, this form, like all others, has permission. So if I don't want just anyone doing this, I can go into permissions. Of course, that's here. And I can find that form, and I can make sure no one has permission to use it except those who I want to use it. So that takes me to the estimated cost explanation. Whenever you have an item, you have the option of putting in an estimated cost. And then eventually, when you start buying it, a new field will show up right here in this blank area called average cost. And we should just go find one. R410. So here's an item that has an estimated cost of $9.88. It has an average cost of $7.12. If I want to know the average cost over history, I can go to the item's history, go to the average cost history, and I can see what the average cost has been at the end of every month since the beginning of our use of this software. But right now, the average is $7.12. And there's a help topic explaining exactly how that's calculated. The estimated cost is what we think we'll pay. That can be handy for many reasons. One is, suppose a layman who doesn't know what this is ordering it. We want to give him or her an idea of how much we should be paying so we don't get overcharged. It's also possible that it would come in handy when we want to mark up by estimated cost and not the average cost, because we might get a really good deal buying this item in bulk. And we may not want our retail price to reflect this great deal that we got. So we might want the software to always use estimated cost when it's marking things up. If you pay sales commission on parts, there's even an option in our sales commission system. There's even an option to pay people a commission considering the estimated cost, not considering the direct cost when calculating the commission, including gross profit. That's attention to detail. Now, the estimated cost is also used here in the purchase order. So if I wanted to come in here and order this item, R410, there it is, and I put in a rate of, say, $12.12, it's going to tell me, hey, you changed the cost that you usually pay for this item. So in other words, your estimated cost is $9.88, and now you're paying $12.12. Do you want the software to go ahead and update the estimated cost field? Now, you may say no, because maybe you're getting ripped off. You're paying more than usual because you're desperate. You're buying it from some place that you don't normally pay this much for. So you might say no to that. Then again, it could have gone up due to inflation, normal factors, and you might tell the software, yes, go ahead and change the estimated cost field. It's your choice. You can tell the software, by the way, don't show me this message again. You might want to do that if you never want to update the estimated cost field, because it will not do it automatically. However, there's a preference for that. There's a preference up here in preferences to say, don't ask me, just do it. Again, attention to detail. Somebody wanted that. So I could say, don't ask me, just do it, and don't show me this message again. Those are the options. And what that should have done is that should have updated that price. So if I go back to the item, we should see the estimated cost is updated. Now, here I am in the PO. We won't get into POs, but I want to let you know, just like most of these forms, there's preferences here too, and you get to decide what columns you want to see. So that item is now on order. Oh, memo is required. So in preferences, lots of preferences, right? I've told the program I want a memo. So I might say ordered refrigerant for John. And it's expected 03/04/2020 is when we're supposed to be getting it in. Save and close. All right, so we're back to the item, and it says $9.88 still. That's because we had it opened. So if I close it and reopen it, then it's now 1212, just like we expected. So that's how the estimated cost can be maintained. And then you have the ability to update the pricing whenever you want to, based on the estimated cost or the average cost that you're paying. Any questions on any of that? Okay, so what we saw here is we saw the basics, and it took an hour, but we saw the basic flow of an estimate and how you would create an estimate and turn it into an invoice. And we covered a few of the finer points using the lookup, where the prices come from, how they might change. We could easily have spent 10 more hours on the topic. Certainly 5. Certainly 5. Because there's a lot to say. But in about an hour, I could have you ready to create estimates. And also, in that same hour, have you ready to create invoices from the estimates. So it's pretty easy to get you going with the basics. The software, though, has the ability for me to spend many, many, many more hours on all the finer points, possibilities, and capabilities that make this software so powerful. That does not mean you have to know any of that to get started. You should be able to get started pretty quickly ordering things, entering bills, paying for things, receiving inventory, getting the inventory to your people, getting invoices, collecting money, getting the money deposited, running payroll, paying everybody. Those are your basics. And then you'll have an opportunity to know all the great detail that the software allows, all the attention to detail that we put into it. But don't be afraid. You don't have to know it all right now. That's all I have for you. One last opportunity to ask questions. Anybody have anything? All right. Well, I thank you very much. And I've got that stopped now. The recording stopped. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about anything at all? Not related to that, but.
So, Stephanie, can you send us like a list? Do you have a list of people that sign up for AU?
Hold on. She's not going to do that. How would you find that?
I can. I could just.
Yeah. How would you do that? No. Tell me how you do that.
I could.
What did you sell them?
Filter. Optoro University, so I could just do a filter.
You sold them an item, didn't you?
Yeah. So I could go to a history of the item. I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Stephanie doesn't need to be involved. Right? Yeah. Go to your item history. It'll show you every sale you ever made for that item. You'll recognize who they are, right?
Yeah.
So there they are. Just sort by date. And then you don't have to bug her. As long as you know who you are, you just have to look at sales rep and you got it.
Yeah. I could also.
You see,
but this way it's easy.
Well, you could. You create a filter, but what I'm getting at here is the software does so much. And so, I challenged you just now because that's the struggle that our users go through. They don't realize what they have. I mean, when people say this software is hard to use, they most likely just don't know how to use it. Because imagine how many of our users would have the same question. Hey, Stephanie, can you give me a list of people that we sold a widget to so I can call them and tell them it's been recalled? And you'd say, no, hold on a minute. You can go do that in 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. 60 seconds max. Anybody could go get a list of people they sold a recalled motor to, if they're using the software properly. So the more you know about the program, the easier it is to sell it, support it, train on it, talk about it, market it, and everything else. That's why we're here.
Good point. Good calling out.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, completely unrelated. Oh, I'm sorry. While I have you on the phone, thinking of a special for St. Patrick's Day. Do you have any particular ideas on that? I'm sorry I didn't ask you about it earlier this week.
I'll think about it, let you know.
Okay. Okay. Sounds
Anybody else, if you have anybody else has an opinion, feel free, to let her know too. All right, so your marching orders today is to call all your Aptora University people and ask them if they are coming. And if they're wishy-washy, you might push them a little bit, push them gently, but say, look, we're thinking of canceling the event if not enough people want to come. So can you please tell me, do you want to come? Are you planning on coming? Do you feel uncomfortable coming? So I'd like firm answers by the end of the day, certainly by tomorrow being Friday. I'd like firm answers from every company that signed up. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
I'll send...
Stephanie, when you get answers, just email us just so we'll know.
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and send the 4 that I've responded so far, but yeah, I'll update it as it goes on.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.